Alright, so we're going to try the straight-in landing version of the landing training engagement. As soon as we pop in, we should be at roughly 2,000 feet and 400 knots. We're obviously a little higher than that. I'm going to pop my speed brakes. We want to bring our speed down to 300 knots, so we need to slow down fairly quickly. Go, and as soon as it's at 300 knots, we'll drop our gear. There we go, 300 knots. We drop our landing gear. That didn't do it for some reason. Landing gear, there we go. We want to stay for right now about 2,000 feet. We're trying to get lined up with the runway, which you can probably just barely see right here. And stay roughly 2,000 feet. We're going to fly basically straight and level at 2,000 feet until we intercept the glide slope to the runway, which is pretty easy to do on a nice clear day like this. So the other thing we want to do, pop this to the right so we can see our winds. Oh, and we need to call the tower to ask for a landing. So we're going to ask for unrestricted approach so we can do whatever we want pretty much.
F-16, 10 miles, south, 1,000, inbound for free landing.
Good morning, Goblin 2-1, inbound approach. Continue inbound, a straight-in approach, runway 36. QH2984.
2984 is already put in.
Contact tower for landing. Switch to 29230.
Okay, 29230, so we're going to switch that. Should be there, and then we're going to call into the tower and request a landing. If I can hit the right number on my keyboard.
F-16 inbound for landing.
While trying to maintain straight, lined up with the runway.
2-1, Kunshan Tower. Continue inbound for runway 36. Report on final.
And we should just about be lining up with the glide slope. So we're going to go ahead and report on final.
Goblin 2-1 on final.
There we go. That 2.5 degree dashed marker.
Goblin 2-1, Kunshan Tower. Continue inbound for runway 36.
Is pretty much even with the runway threshold. We have 2 lights on the poppy system. So we're going to bring our flight path marker down. And then we're going to bring our angle of attack indicator up. And the way that I like to fly this down to the ground basically is angle of attack, the very top of the AOA bracket, pretty much where you want to touch down. And the flight path marker right even with the top of the AOA bracket. And then once I'm here, I want to go ahead and put my speed brakes out again. If they're not already. Speed brakes out is a nice easy way to maintain a throttle setting, a higher throttle setting, while still maintaining a lower speed. So we have the top of our AOA bracket roughly where we want to land. We bring our flight path marker down to match it. We're just doing that with throttle input. So a little more throttle, a little less throttle, depending on where we need to be. We're using the pitch on the stick to control where our AOA bracket is on the runway. Pretty much lined up with the poppy lights, honestly, is a good spot. Or at least that's the way I do it. And then we just fly this right down to the runway, pretty much. Right at the end, we will use a little bit of a stick to pull the AOA bracket up just a little bit. So we'll go from
Goblin 2-1, Kunshan Tower, wing 320 at 6 knots, runway 36, cleared for landing. Check gear down.
Gear is down. We'll basically fly this, and then right at the end we'll pull a little back on the stick so that we move the landing spot where we want to land from the top of the AOA bracket to the middle. And simultaneously we'll pull back on the throttle just a bit. So again, we're just keeping things lined up, pretty much top of the AOA bracket. We're at about 400 feet right now. Drifting, there we go. We lost some of our crosswind. So we just get lined back up, keep flying it down. Once we get nice and low, come over the runway threshold. So we will reduce throttle just a little bit. Pull back on the stick just a little bit to line that up with the landing spot. There we go. Cut the throttle once your wheels are down. And hold about 12 degrees on the gun cross. And we'll use the shape of the F-16 to essentially slow us down until the nose drops on its own. So I'm just holding back on the stick, there, the wheel dropped, and then we can use our wheel brakes to help slow us down a little more. Try to get back in the middle of the runway. Kind of drifted off the middle of the runway there. So overall, that was probably one of my better landings. That was pretty good. As soon as we get off the runway, we want to switch to ground control. And we want to engage our nose wheel steering. There we go. So it's kind of once you cross that line is where you want to be.
Goblin 2-1, contact below. Switch to 73525.
There you go. So we switch it over, contact ground, taxi back to ramp. They'll give us our taxi directions.
Taxi back.
Goblin 2-1, taxi back to the ramp. Echo, Papa, Charlie, 04.
Echo, Papa, Charlie, and 04. So we have Echo. If you don't already know how to read the sort of runway, taxiway instructions, this is showing us what we're on. This taxiway we're on right here is Echo. And the one we're going to cross here is Papa. And that's where you can see the P for Papa. Yeah, so give it a little throttle to get us going. In the F-16, you do not want to turn too fast. In the game, you actually can turn at a pretty good speed, but it's a relatively small landing gear, especially the two back ones. They're not very far apart, so it's not the most stable. It's actually pretty easy to tip the plane to one side. So we're going Echo, Papa, Charlie. So we're on Papa now. We want to look for Charlie. Echo was a crossway, so we're parallel to the runway now, and the crossing taxiways are then also labeled. So we had Echo. The next one we come across will be Delta. We want to go all the way to Charlie, and once we get on Charlie, then we're looking for parking spot 04 is what he told us to go to. This is pretty cool. I can remember back in the day when BMS, or even the base like Falcon 4, Allied Force games and things like that, there wasn't this level of instruction. You basically got clearance to taxi and you were on your own to taxi. So the fact that they actually tell you which taxiways to take is pretty cool. So that's Delta right there. That's one of the crossings. So you could come off the runway on taxiway Delta and get to Papa, just like we did. Sorry. We went on Echo, but you could have gone on Delta if we'd have slowed down faster. I do feel like this game is programmed, though, to always tell you to go to Echo. Regardless, even if you make the call when you're on taxiway Delta, it still tells you to go to Echo. And this is taxiway Charlie right here. So we will slow this down, make our turn. It always takes me a while to get used to the turning point on the F-16, because if you look on the outside, the front wheel, which is what you're steering with, is actually in the two-seater version. It's actually behind the pilot, so it's a little weird. I also forgot to shut my speed brakes, so we should go ahead and do that. Speed brakes are closed. There we go. And now we would be looking for parking spot 4. Now, this is where it does get a little bit difficult, and you'll want to refer, if you want to follow these directions in the game, honestly, it doesn't matter where you park. You can park pretty much wherever you want. But if you want to follow the directions correctly, you sort of need to know which parking spot you're going to. There are parking diagrams in the airport diagrams portion of the documentation for BMS, which will tell you which parking spot is number 4. I see a 5 over there. I don't know which one is number 4, so I'm just going to pull into one of these shelters here, and we're going to call it number 4. But you could easily look at the airport diagram and know which parking spot you are going to. It may be one of those hardened shelters over there. I really don't know. But we'll just take this one. It's the 4th little bunker here. Pull right up to our spot. Brakes on. Probably a little more forward. There we go. And parking brake on. That's not my parking brake switch. Where's my parking brake switch? There we go. And then at this point you could shut down the airplane. Or just end it.